and welcome to the Joe Ligato Show. I'm your favorite Joe Ligato and host of the Joe Ligato Show. Yes, that's right, Joe Ligato. And I'm here providing news, analysis, and commentary on Vladimir Putin's speech at the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. And we've had a grand old time, particularly in the last couple of videos, me just talking about data science, big data, being really hyped about all the latest innovations, using Stellaris, Jargon. So if you're interested in that, please go back and watch those videos. But that's after we continue this speech, because we're almost done with it. We've been on this speech for it's a month of videos, and we're almost done with it. He's getting to some of the hype parts, and just as a psychology person, there's things called primacy and recency effects, and so you really want to start out with really cool things, and then you want to end with really cool things, because those are the things that people will remember. Primacy, first things that people go over; recency, the last things people go over. Those are the primacy and recency effects, and so he really did do that. Like, he started off talking about really hype topics, and now he's kind of rounding off the speech talking about AI, automation, big data, all these cool topics. And so he understands those, or at least his helpers understand the primacy and recency effect. Anyways, let's dive into that. And if you want to hear more psychology factoids, interesting fun facts, please let me know in the comment section. I'll provide some videos on that stuff as well, because obviously as an industrial organizational psychologist, I love talking about that stuff too. So let's get into it.
We need to secure high growth rate while keeping the price dynamics close to the target of 4%. As you are aware, the Bank of Russia says that by the end of the year, the inflation rate might rise to around 4 to 5%. But containing the price hikes is not just the mandate of the Bank of Russia, because the government has to help by stimulating supply. And it's important to raise the efficiency and the profitability of government and public expenditure. Our policy aimed at supply economy, also at raising the efficiency of budget expenditure. These are the priorities upon which our federal budget for the next 3 years is going to be based. And we are going to talk about that in July at the Council on Strategic Development in great detail. On a particular basis, I would like to say that we said a lot about supply economy, and when there is a supply, we need demand. And the expansion of Russia's economic capacities and its potential have to be directly linked to raising the welfare of our citizens. And this is the very
Okay, really interesting fact, and I feel like governments and people in general just kind of forget this, but if you have a supply of something, the more demand there is, the more you can charge for that good or service. And so what he's talking about here is Russia has a decently sized population, and what they need to do is they need to increase the wealth of their people so that those people can serve as a domestic economy. Now, you do need consumers, you do need demand within your economy. I think the way the West does it, with having people consume things that are negative, detrimental to them, and getting them kind of like addicted to it so that they're like forced to do it over and over again, just be endless consumers. I feel like that's almost like being hooked into the matrix. You're just like, your entire existence is consuming, no matter how detrimental it is to the individual. But like Russia and China, the way they talk about domestic consumer economies is you want people to consume the right things that are of strategic interest to your country and that are beneficial to the health of the people so that they can grow stronger from generation to generation. And you see that in the way he talks about increasing the welfare of the people so that they can consume things, ideally, that are healthy for the individual to benefit both themselves and future generations. So interesting kind of dichotomy between how the West talks about a domestic consumer economy and how the multipolar world talks about a domestic consumer economy.
Embodiment of economic growth. And I will conclude here by what I began with. I'm not just talking about keeping low inflation and high employment rate. We need to make sure that the incomes of our citizens rise at an accelerated pace. The Russian economy has to be an economy of high salaries, with new requirements for professional education, with higher labor productivity based on automation and new management systems. This should be an economy with high-quality modern jobs and labor conditions. I know that many, well, at least some, believe that high price of labor decreases the global competitiveness of the country. In the past, this view was justified, but it's becoming obsolete, if not so already, because it does not take into account the realities of today, let alone tomorrow, because high-tech is the future of the economy. And it's impossible to achieve high technology by using low-qualified labor. And if it's high-qualified labor, then it should get the proper remuneration. And only there where we have big salaries and professionals will we achieve high-quality products, and this will allow us to achieve sovereign equality and also technological economic leadership. The government is accommodating the business, helping it address the most urgent problems with logistics and...
Okay, so the government, again, using my Gardner example from prior videos, the government is there to cultivate the economy. They're there to make sure it grows in ways that are beneficial for the nation. And also, he's kind of touched upon something that I do want to get into a little bit. When he's talking about inflation, the multipolar world really has an innovative idea when it comes to inflation. So places like China and Russia, whenever inflation happens, if they want to keep their currency pegged to the US dollar, what they will do is they'll print more of their own currency, but then they will use it for things that have long-term benefits, whereas the West does things that have very short-term benefits, mostly just to like appease its increasingly dissatisfied populace. But places like China, whenever the 2007-2008 financial crisis happened, they spent all that extra money because they wanted to keep their currency pegged to the dollar. They spent all that extra money on things like infrastructure, and they really innovated their country. And you see that countries like Russia and countries like China that do that, where they will spend their money thinking about improving the country in the long term. They're not thinking about the next election cycle and what will get them votes for that election cycle. They're thinking about their country as a civilization state, a country that has been around for centuries, many centuries, if not millennia, in the case of China, versus the 200 and some year time span of the United States that thinks in what I would consider very, very, very short terms. United States has a quarterly earning mindset. People like Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping have a century mindset, and just an interesting dichotomy to keep in mind in terms of how they go about thinking about problems and coming up with potential solutions to problems.
And so on and so forth. And we hope that the business will reciprocate and show social responsibility. I will say what I said recently at the Congress of the Russian Union of Industrialists and entrepreneurs, and at the meeting with the Business Russia. We will help those businesses who have long-term plans intended to reinforce technology, industrial and agrarian sovereignty of our country. We will help those who invest money into Russia, who are not trying to pump money out of Russia, those who invest into infrastructure, environmental projects, territories and cities. Russian government support measures have to be tied to raising salaries, improving labor conditions, expanding social packages for the employees. And I would like to ask the government to pay its utmost attention to this issue. Currently, Russia has a very tight-packed and ambitious economic agenda. The difficulties and problems we are encountering are but an impetus to all of us to move faster and achieve a high quality of transformation. We need to improve the quality of life and the welfare of our citizens, and we will certainly improve the sovereignty of our country in all spheres. And we're open to a partnership on an equal footing with all countries, with all those who, just as Russia, cherishes their national interests and who is ready to set their own future course. Thank you very much.
Okay, some interesting tidbits at the end there as well, talking about specifically creating autonomous sovereign countries that can work independently of the American-led international system. It's something that when Venezuela or in Iran were decoupled from the global international economy, they couldn't really do. They weren't big enough countries. But Russia, just like because of the stature of its country and because of its resilience as a country and so many other factors, it's able to not only survive and thrive given the sanctions of the West, but it can help other countries do that too. And I don't think the United States fully thought through what it was doing when it allowed Russia, I shouldn't say allowed, it didn't really have many options in the matter, but when it tried to take on Russia in such a way as they did at the beginning of this Ukraine conflict, they made it so Russia now has a drive to make sure that other countries can do the same thing that Russia did, which was decouple and not only survive from the decoupling of the West, but also thrive from that decoupling. And so other countries that have faced problems in the past from the United States couldn't do that. Russia can. Okay? And so I think that's a good spot to leave you at. A lot of interesting tidbits in this speech. So if you like this video, please like it. If you want to hear more content from me, please subscribe to our channel. We have a lot of interesting stuff coming up. This was one of those kind of labors of love for me, doing like it's probably been like at least a dozen videos on this Vladimir Putin speech. And I know I could have just kind of given a summary of like the major points, but I really wanted to go in and provide my commentary because I knew no one else was really going to do that. And I thought it was important enough that I should do that. I'd read some of the summaries. I'm like, all right, he goes over enough interesting stuff here that I need to really dive deep into this so that my viewers can really understand what's going on in the world and the direction of the world. So thank you for sticking with me throughout all of this. We're going to continue to grow as a channel, continue to innovate as a channel, and can't wait to have you there with me. So thank you, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Bye.